Krishna Eugene and his good wife, Lisa Prabhu, for allowing us to come and visit you. We're very fortunate to be able to do such a thing.
Looks nice under Prabhupada.
Yeah. So Dhananjay Prabhu, basically, thank you for coming, and it's an honor to have you here. We would like you to read a very interesting letter to you, only to you, from Prabhupada. It's dated 31st of December 1972. I think you know about this letter.
No.
So but it's very good then. So this letter actually, it's from Prabhupada to you. And but before, actually, I would like to that you will present yourself a little bit, because I tried to find any information on the internet, and I failed. Yes, and you're a very, very humble person, but I know for sure a minimum information. I know that you were the one, the very important person in London Yatra and UK Yatra. You actually were one of the person who suggest, like, who give recommendation for initiations, as I've heard. It's true or not, I don't know, but you were very, very powerful in this yatra. So everyone's know you. So tell a little about yourself, and then read this.
You want me to read this?
Yes.
He wants
Okay.
to tell you about himself.
All right. My dear such and such, please accept my blessings. I'm in due receipt of your letter dated 28th of December 1972, delivered by Latika from London, and I am very happy to hear of all the good news in English and Scottish temples in general. I have heard also from Revati Nandan Swami how the things are going there, and his report is also very much encouraging to me. I'm especially glad to note that everyone is feeling so much enthusiasm to work very hard in this preaching mission. That enthusiasm must be maintained under all circumstances. That is our price for entering into King Krishna's kingdom. And Maya is always trying to take away our enthusiasm to serve Krishna, because without enthusiasm, everything else is finished. Therefore, Rupa Goswami has introduced this system of regulative principles, which I have taught to you also. These regulative principles, such as rising before 4 a.m. for Mangal Artik, chanting 16 rounds minimum on beads daily, reading books, going to the street, Sankirtan, preaching to anyone and everyone, offering the prasadam, like that, these principles of devotional service are there to safeguard us from Maya's attack by keeping us always enthusiastic. If we strictly observe these principles, we shall remain always enthusiastic. These are the sources and the maintainers of our enthusiasm to serve Krishna. As soon as someone is not following them regularly, it may be certain that his enthusiasm will gradually disappear. Therefore, my request to you is that under any and all circumstances, that you yourself shall stick to these principles without fail. Let me read that again. Therefore, my request to you is that under any and all circumstances, that you yourself shall without fail stick to these principles and make certain that all of the devotees in your charge are also following them strictly. If new students are coming and they want to live with us in the temple, they must agree before living with us to follow these principles without any exception. Otherwise, it is better for them to live outside and attend the class, Kartik, Prasadam, like that, and gradually, as they become convinced by their intelligence, they will voluntarily agree to perform the austerity or tapasya of living in the temple. But anyone who lives in a temple must follow all these principles without exception. Otherwise, they may be asked to live outside. Of course, we work very hard just to get someone to come to the temple of devotee of Krishna. So we shall not be too much hasty to drive anyone out. Therefore, we may forgive once, twice, but more than that, we must take other steps. So if any new candidate for devotee comes forward, you may test him very thoroughly to understand from him if he is ready to fully accept our strict standard of temple living. Let him understand that it is not an arbitrary or whimsical decision on our parts to become like military camp. Rather, we are strictly adhering to our devotional principles only so that we may make advancement in Krishna consciousness and be protected from the attack of Maya consciousness. They may be thinking that these people are slaves of their strict principles, but we are thinking that the stricter principles are slaves to us. Of course, the devotee is always very liberal-minded and tolerant towards everyone, seeing everyone as a part and parcel of Krishna and the pure devotee of Krishna, only seeing that due to Maya, they have temporarily forgotten their real position. So a devotee is always very understanding if there is some discrepancy behavior on the part of non-devotees. And even some devotees misbehave, he is always very tolerant and understanding. The point is that no one is actually qualified in this material world to approach Krishna. But if he makes the attempt through our inducing him gradually to give his energy to Krishna, by that attempt, Krishna will extend his mercy and deliver the fallen soul despite his so many disqualifications. And such person, or aspiring devotee, he is to be considered the most exalted of men, because he has given his life to Krishna. Bhanam janmanam ankte yanavan mam prabhatyate vasudeva sarvam iti sa mahatma sidurlabha. After many births and deaths, he is actually in knowledge surrendering to me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 19. So you are the leader of London Temple, one of the most important temples in the world. So your responsibility is very, very immense. But it is also Krishna's blessing upon you. So try to please him always by understanding that the instructions of Krishna as he is giving in Bhagavad Gita, and by that understanding, you will be able to manage everything without any difficulty at all. But I think you must be already very much advanced in your understanding of Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, how so many nice devotees are coming, and how there is always such good report from London Temple. And I am especially pleased by the newspaper clipping from Edinburgh. They have given very good write-up, just to the points. So for painting of the deity, it will not be necessary to bring Murlidhar from New York just for that purpose. We should not be so hasty to make such drastic programs. Radha and Krishna are transcendental to such artistic work. They do not depend upon our painting of them for their beauty, but they should be painted as nicely as possible if there is at present some deterioration of the painting. But I think someone is there, either in London or some other place in Europe, who can do the work perfectly well. I mean, it just goes on and on, my goodness. Now, our first business in London will be to get that new place. I have been informed from Shamsundar that you're expecting to hear about that priory at any moment, whether they have accepted our bid or not. But this place or that place, we must get sufficient new place in London to give facility to the preaching work there. I can understand that it is Krishna's desire that we have got that place at Bury Place. It has become world famous due to that location, So try to keep that place also as long as possible. But in order to expand all over British Isles, we shall require a big headquarters as you are contemplating. But if there is no solid program for getting the place, simply we are depending upon agents and George to do everything, then we may not be favored by Krishna to get a place very quickly. Better to take the upper hand and begin very energetically attempting to get some place by our expending energy for Krishna. That is appreciated, not the actual result of our energy, but if there is lack of energy being devoted for some purpose, then everything will be delayed and possibly stopped. Better to seize the iron while the fire is hot. That my Guru Maharaj used to tell me. So George is now convinced of our movement. He will pay. So why the delay and difficulty? I think you should very seriously and with a very cool head apply yourself to getting that place or some other place as soon as possible, at least by springtime. Otherwise, Krishna may take away this golden opportunity, being disappointed by our lack of enthusiasm and labor. You may inform me from time to time how your search for the new place is progressing more and more. Hoping this makes you in good health, your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. I've never read this before. I can't remember. That's got to be one of the longest letters ever. Have you got more like this? Hare Krishna.
So, Dhananjay, thank you very much.
You know, it's interesting because after I got this letter from Prabhupada and his description of how to look after the guests, we had this one guest who came all the way from India, and he also stopped in Amsterdam before he came to London. And his name was Ricky Slavic. You've heard of that name? That's Radhanath Swami.
Oh, wow.
And he came and stayed with us for 10 days. And I welcomed him at the front door. And he was just like off the ferry, wherever he came from, with long locks, and his clothing looked quite dirty, and he looked a bit of a mess. But then I remembered Prabhupada saying, no matter who shows up at the front door, you should at least give them an opportunity to go inside and learn about Krishna consciousness. And if they agree to the 4 regulative principles and they agree to do some service, then they can stay with us. And that's who came. That was one of the first steps. Ricky Slavic, who went on to New Vrindavan after being in London.
So, Dhananjay Prabhu, please tell us, this 28th of December 1972, actually it was very, very close to buy this property. And Prabhupada didn't know about what will happen. So tell us the whole picture. What was the time and the circumstances of December 1972 in
It
in
was
London?
very cold. I remember that. It was snowing all the time. And I got the information about, at that time it's called Pigot's Manor. And there was this estate agent, and they were in, what's the name of that street? Huh?
Hanover Square?
No. This is just across the road from Kensington Palace Gardens and Hyde Park. And I kept remembering the name, and then I forget, then I remember again. Right now I'm forgetting, because it's quite important that people know where these things happened. It's a very historical thing. And I went there. I went to the estate agent's office, and then I sneaked into the property without anybody knowing about it. This is before I made an official appointment. And I noticed one of the bars was open like this, these metal bars.
Get the fence around them.
The pond is surrounded by these things. And so I had a look around, and no one noticed me. And I saw there was a cottage, there was stables, there was a pond, and it was 17 acres of land. And so what I did in those days, because I was the one who was working with George Harrison and cultivating him and delivering him prasadam every single day, practically speaking, and giving him association. And he was wonderful. In the year 72, we looked at about 8 different properties. And I would go first and check it out. Now, I didn't have karmi clothes. I just had a dhoti and kurta and a shaved head and tilak. That's how I went about my business like that. So when I used to show up at the estate agents, because some of them were very world famous, actually, some, they were wondering, where's he coming from? And how can he afford to buy such an expensive property? But then if I thought it was going to be something that we should ensue, and get more and more involved in, getting, putting down a price for a property, then George would come and he would pick me up in his Porsche, outside Bury Place. And whenever we stopped at a traffic lights, he had a bead bag in his right hand. And he would hold up the bead bag, because people would recognize him through the windows of the car. And he'd go, chant Hare Krishna and be happy. Hare Krishna. He was a very active preacher like that. And that was absolutely amazing. And there was also one property that we saw with Srila Prabhupada. It was Prabhupada, George Harrison, Shyam Sundar. What's the name of that?
Patty Boyd is one. Oh, you're talking about...
About Runnymede. There's a place on the Thames called Runnymede. And Runnymede is a place where the Magna Carta was written. You probably don't know about this. It's going back to the 11th century, 11th, 12th century, by King John. And he wanted to do an assessment, for the whole of the United Kingdom. He wanted to know how many pigs there were, how many cows, how many sheep, how much land did people have. It was really quite an amazing thing, this Magna Carta. And so there was a farm just across the River Thames, and it's called Runnymede Farm. But that farm had not been utilized for years. It was full of, so many black, bushes, thorny bushes, and shrubs, and so many, not any clear fields. So when I took George there, he said they shouldn't call this place Runnymede, they should call it Runny Down. That's British humor, run down, Runny Down, anyway. And so I thought that, Prabhupada and George would like to see the actual house, because there was a large house that went with the property. And so we went up to the front area of the house, and Prabhupada stopped, and then we kind of stood around Prabhupada, and he had his walking stick. And he said, so here we should build a bank. And Bhakti Pramod, that was the name of the initiated disciple who was working for the Midland Bank. And he pointed to Bhakti Pramod and he said, you will be the manager of the bank. And then he said, and he pointed his stick to George and said, and you will deposit all your money in that bank. And we'll spend all that money on serving Krishna.
What was the name of the bank?
The Midland Bank. Midland.
He just worked, that gentleman worked,
Yeah.
that devotee worked for that bank.
He was the security manager for the bank. He used to call Prabhupada Your Grace. He was really formal with Srila Prabhupada, and always covered his legs with a blanket so he didn't feel the cold. And he loved taking Prabhupada on tours of London, to all the sort of historical places, including Buckingham Palace and St. James Park and all kinds of places. He's a very, very charming person. And his wife used to make these very English typical meals for Prabhupada, like a vegetarian shepherd's pie and scones with, in Cornwall there's a type of cream, which is Cornish cream, which is basically thick, like custard. You could hold a packet of it like this and it wouldn't fall out. So they're called Devon splits. And so Prabhupada liked those things too. It was really always encouraging. And also, him and his wife, they used to go for Scottish dancing, Highland dancing, and he'd wear a kilt. You know what a kilt is, right? And he'd wear this kilt. And we didn't have chairs in Prabhupada's darshan room, but when, Bhakti Prabhupada would come, he would sit on the carpet. And he couldn't really sort of bend his legs like us, sitting in a lotus position. So Prabhupada was looking at him saying, "Are you feeling comfortable in that skirt? Or should I get you a chair?" It was hilarious, actually. Prabhupada had a wonderful sense of humor, I must say. Anyway, so the reason that we were looking for some new property is because we had so many devotees living in Berry Place. It was a 5-story building that used to be run by the Trinitarian Bible Society. And they used to distribute Bibles all over the world. They had their kind of warehouse there. And on festival days, we'd have up to 65 devotees at Berry Place. And not just our building, but a couple of buildings down the street. And, interesting. Some of the neighbors were quite happy with the result, but some people weren't, especially somebody called Mr. French. Remember him? Mr. French. He didn't like us at all. He didn't like the fact that we were sleeping on his roof of his building. But anyway, we had to do something. There was nowhere else for him to stay. So, Prabhupada for some reason chose me to cultivate George Harrison. But the reason that I'll tell you, the real reason for looking for a big building was that when Prabhupada came to Berry Place, he would get the first floor to stay. He had his office and also bedroom. It's the same room. And then across the hall, there was a shower and a toilet. And it was only used for Prabhupada and nobody else. When he wasn't there, the ladies who didn't have a bathroom, they had to go to this place called the Oasis swimming pool, which is about a 10-minute walk from the temple. And that's where they would bathe at this swimming pool.
When Prabhupada was there.
When Prabhupada was there, yeah. But when he wasn't there, they used, when Prabhupada was there,
You didn't use
the ladies didn't, they went to the Oasis swimming pool. And I remember one time, I was coming down the stairs, we had our phone on the 2nd floor. And I just answered a phone call and I came down the stairs, and as I was coming out of downstairs, Prabhupada came out of the bathroom. And he was just in his gumcha. And he was bare-chested, and he had his Brahmin thread wrapped around his right ear. So he came out of the bathroom, and he looks up at me, because I was the only person in that part of the building, and he said, "Who has passed a stubborn stool?" Do you get that? Who has passed a stubborn stool? And of course, I didn't know who had done that. Then he called me an hour or so later, and he said, "I think now's the time to ask our good friend, Mr. George Harris, to help us find a bigger property with proper facilities." And so I was walking to George's Apple Company building. That was on Savile Row, just off Regent's Park. Regent Street. And so I would come laden with so much prasadam, because we all knew he loved, especially Raja Landanishwara Mahaprasad. And so I would go into the building, go to the reception, and say, I've come to see George Harrison." because I knew he was there. He was recording an album called Living in the Material World. There's a very famous album made in 1973. And he had his recording studio down in the basement. And when he found out it was me that was asking to see him, he would call me down. And I would sit with him for at least an hour, and he'd be taking prasadam and also offering prasadam to his friends who were there also, like Eric Clapton's wife was always there, Patty Boyd, and a famous English photographer, Clive Arrowsmith, Ginger Baker from The Cream. I don't know if you know anything about music, but anyway, they were really, really good musicians. And a couple of times he said, you know, you're costing me a fortune. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, well, every time you come, I can't get on with the recording of my album. I just get sitting down with you and we just talk about Prabhupada and Prasadam, and I forget that I've got work to do. And I said, should I stop coming? He said, no. He said, you keep coming, but just be warned. Of course, that was a joke as well. And I asked him, I said, you know, you're so much into Srila Prabhupada, why don't you take a Krishna name? And he said, I don't need to, I've got one already. I said, what do you mean? He said, Hari son of Hari. So he was also quite funny too, and he liked Prabhupada's sense of humor. And anyway, so, you know, I would go to these different places looking for beautiful country homes with lots of rooms and so on, a nice facility. There was actually, in one place I went, there was this convent that was run by Polish nuns. And so it's 22 Polish nuns living on this beautiful property. But the Vatican decided to sell the property because the nuns weren't preaching, because there weren't any, you know, Polish families living around that area. And it was going for a certain price. And so I told George about the price and everything, and he also went out, and of course, then the estate agent would know who was the person who was going to pay for this property. But then there was a thing called gazumping. You know this word, gazumping? Gazumping means when you put an offer on a property, someone else is supposed to come and offer maybe £10,000 more or 20,000 or whatever, and then they ask you, can you equal that? And that's the cheating business. And George really didn't like that at all. So I had to be also very careful, very sensitive with his likes and dislikes. But it was, the manor, this Pigot's Manor came up for sale. And like I said, I came over to just check it out before getting in touch with the estate agent. Then I went inside, took a tour of the inside. And what's now the temple room is where there used to be a payphone. And so I called George up from that payphone. I said, I'm in this village called Lechmore Heath. It's about 17 miles north of London. And he asked, he said, how much do they want? And I said, they want £220,000. And I said, would you like to come out and have a look yourself? He said, no, I can't, because I have an important meeting with Paul, John, and Ringo to talk about the future of the Apple business in Los Angeles. And he said, I'll be gone for 6 months. He said, but don't worry, because that's exactly how much time it usually takes to exchange contracts. And he said, I also trust you. I trust your ability to find nice properties. And he said, I accept this property on your behalf, and we'll buy this on one condition, that you don't spend a penny over £220,000. So I was like, it was difficult for me, because I kept breaking into like a cold sweat when I heard that there were some other groups that were interested in getting this property. And I remember the estate agent called me up and he said, I have a sheikh from the Gulf, from Dubai, with his 8 wives, and they're looking at the property. and they're offering such and such more than the 220,000. Can you equal that amount? And I said, I'm sorry, no, I'm not going to pay a penny above £220, £220,000. So he said, so the guy said, I'd like you to get this property because we feel that, you know, it's better to keep the name in the UK and it shouldn't just go off to some wealthy sheikh somewhere. And then 2 weeks later, he calls me back and he said, you've got good news. The news is that the sheikh's wives started to argue amongst themselves because the place wasn't exactly big enough for, you know, 8 ladies. So they've pulled out. So now you can have first dibs on the property. And so I said, okay, but I'm not going to pay a penny above £220,000. And he said, that's fine. We'll accept your offer. So that's why we got this place.
What was the date of the deal?
It was like about March, April.
I think it was
March, April. And what else was I going to say? Yeah, he kept his promise. I mean, he came back from Los Angeles 6 months later. And of course, we had already contacted Srila Prabhupada. And the property wasn't in ISKCON's name. It was in George Harrison's foundation, which was called the Material World Charitable Foundation. That's what it was called. And the profit from the album, The Living in the Material World, I don't know if you've heard of that. You've got an LP? Okay. And one of the songs actually is dedicated to Prabhupada. And the song that was dedicated is called The Lord Loves the One Who Loves the Lord. So you can listen to that and think of Prabhupada at that. Because I asked George about that. I said, who were you thinking about? He said, Prabhupada, of course. So actually the property became ISKCON in 1980, 7 years later, after, you know, it had been paid for in 1980. That's another story. How long have I got to speak?
We have time, half an hour for questions, for discussions. 35 minutes like this, maybe a little bit more. So actually, Prabhupada was saying in this letter that we should get some place by March.
Yeah, it's March, April. Yeah.
So you actually did.
Yeah.
You did this.
He was happy to do it. What he wasn't happy was the fact that he took a helicopter ride from Heathrow Airport to the lawn at the manor. It was raining, it was windy, it was a small helicopter, and it was going like this all the time, you know. It didn't feel very well. And it did land on the lawn, but the grass was this high, because nobody had cut we just moved in. And Prabhupada had on these little, it wasn't waterproof shoes he was wearing. And so I ran into the building and I saw a pair of somebody's wellies and just immediately grabbed them, went over to the helicopter. Of course, the driver of the helicopter wasn't happy that we were approaching him because, you know, they've got these blades that are whirling around, you know. Anyway, for some, you know, Krishna's mercy, the wellies actually were good for the size of his foot. So he wasn't uncomfortable in that and he kept his feet dry. And he started talking about the building because, you know, we were showing him around. And there was some rooms we couldn't show Prabhupada because the previous owner, she was called Mrs. Ruffles, and she was a Scottish Aberdonian Jew. Now in Scotland, Scots are known to be quite mean with their money, very tight. You know, they have short arms and long pockets. So she removed short arms and long pockets. Yeah, so she removed all the doorknobs of all, and in fact also the knocker at the front gate, the front door. You can still see the outline. It was a lion's head, but she had that removed. She took all the coal out of the coal room, all the diesel, which was part of the central heating system. She siphoned off all the diesel. And yeah, she was a bit of a case. But like I said, we were actually staying in that property for 7 years, and we were paying what's known as a peppercorn rate of 6 peppercorns. Because in the Middle Ages, peppercorns were more expensive than gold.
Wow.
So that, so we were paying £10 a year rent for staying there. But it wasn't our property, it was the Material World Foundation's property. And anyway, things worked out well. And eventually, it was in 1980 that it became an ISKCON property. And George came, of course. He took prashadam with Prabhupada. And he also invited us to his house. There's a famous photo, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's in some books, where there's Prabhupada, Paddy Boy, George Harrison, and me. I'm the disciple standing next to George Harrison. And so we went upstairs to a room, and we sat there, and George had just gone off to I think the florist just down the road from where he lives, because his property was in Henley-on-Thames. And he brought back a big bouquet of flowers for Prabhupada and a huge basket full of fruit. And he paid full dandavats to Srila Prabhupada. I mean, he was really very much into, respecting Srila Prabhupada like anything. It's quite a miracle, really, because he could easily have donated that property to anybody else. And there were some really big charities that were trying to convince George to give the property to them and not to us. But he kept his word. And yeah, I mean, actually it's just over there, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not very far.
Beautiful.
All right, has anyone got any questions? Yes?
Did you know Judge Harrison also gives some to other organizations, religious organizations?
I couldn't understand a word you said.
I heard that George Harrison was also supporting some other religious organization as well next to ISKCON.
I still couldn't understand it.
He was sponsoring as well other organizations, not ISKCON only. George Harrison.
Not that I know. Obviously, I was just involved in this property. But it was a fact that they were approaching George, but he was saying, no, I've given my promise. I don't want to break my promise. It's going to go to the Hare Krishnas. And it did.
So, Dhananjay Prabhu, it was from my question, that time in 1973, I think what was, if you see now the ISKCON in UK and what was in 1972, 73, what's the main difference between now and then in terms of enthusiasm, like growing? What would you maybe add from 1972, 73 to nowadays?
Well, when Prabhupada came, one of the first things he wanted to do, he wanted us to purchase 150 cows. Because the reason he wanted to call it New Gokula was he wanted a big dairy farm. And so as I mentioned, the actual house stands on only 17 acres. And I'm not a farmer, but I had to say something, so Prabhupada said, is that feasible? You can keep 150 cows? I said, no, because each cow requires 1 acre of land for eating grass. And he said, so 150 cows means 150 acres? What's the difficulty? Purchase immediately 150 acres of land. The difficulty was that land was costing £1,000 an acre, and we didn't have that money. And he had all these amazing kind of things going on in his head that he wanted us to purchase a double-decker bus, drive the bus into central London, advertise, Bhaktivedanta Manor, and take guests from central London all the way out here so they could see the cows. And Prabhupada said, and of course from all the milk that you'll be getting from 150 cows, you can make cheese, you can make ghee, you can make butter, you can make cream, so many things like that. You'll be completely self-sufficient in dairy products, and you can also sell them too. And he said there should also be deity making going on, made of brass, and all different kinds of handmade things that can also be sold to the public. But,
To the public, yes.
yeah. But that was of course, we've never had 150 acres of land. I think now we have about 77 or 80 acres. We're still a bit off target, even after 50 years, But that's something that, where is he? Oh yeah, you know all about that. Yeah, because he was the manager of the Goshala. And I kept always encouraging devotees that, at this particular point that Prabhupada wanted a specific amount of cows. Then he said you can call the place New Gokula. Gokula means the place where the cows are kept. Yeah. And of course he named the deities Radha Gokulananda after they were installed, not before. And there's also a whole story about those deities. We actually got those deities from India. And the reason that,
In 72, we got them.
Yeah,
before
before
the manor was
we got the manor, we got the deities. Now the deities were a set of Radha Krishna deities that were made in Jaipur. There's one street or one lane in Jaipur called Kejriwalanka Rasta. Did I say it right? Kejriwalanka Rasta? You don't know? Okay. Anyway, it's where all the murtiwalas are. And in those days, all the murtis came with, marble cloth, or the outline of the marble. Was, cloth and crowns and so on. And I lost my train of thought.
Those deities.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, there was a devotee called Tejas. He purchased those deities from Jaipur. And the reason he wanted them, that Prabhupada was putting on a big festival in Connaught Place in Delhi, which is the heart of the city, Connaught Place. And it was being held on the LIC grounds, which means, what is it called? Life Insurance Corporation of India. Mm-hmm. And they had this huge pandal, this huge tent that could sit up to 20,000 people. And Prabhupada was getting 20,000 people every day coming to hear him talk. And he didn't want himself to be the only personality that they were looking at. He wanted them to be looking at Radha and Krishna and remembering them, not particularly him, and the deities were never installed. But Jamuna, she treated those deities like they were installed. She dressed them, she bathed them, she fed them. And so after the week was over, those deities, which were not installed, were put in a warehouse or a go-down. The Hindi word is go-down, which means the same as warehouse. Mm-hmm. And they were putting these wooden crates, and they were lying there, and the Gurudas was responsible for them. And so when Prabhupada came in 72 to Berry Place, I happened to be the TP at that time. This is before this letter came out as well, not December, but in the summer. And so Prabhupada says to me, of course he said so many things, but he specifically said, if you like, there's a set of Radha Krishna deities lying in 2 crates in a warehouse doing nothing. And if you like, they can come here. If I like, I make all the decisions where the deity should go. He was always putting so much responsibility on our very short shoulders, And I said, of course, that means he wants them to come. It's not me, it's him. And so I contacted Guru Das, Jamula's husband at that time. And I said that those deities, are you aware of those deities sitting in 2 crates? And he said, yes. They said, why? And I said, because Prabhupada wants these deities to come to London. And he said, how are they going to get to London? And I said, well, obviously, I'll ask Prabhupada. So I asked Prabhupada. I said, how should these deities come? Should they come by air or by ship? And he said, better they come by air. It's quicker and it's safer. So there was one Dr. Shah. He was a Gujarati businessman that dealt in money. He would lend people money, and get an interest. And he was very successful. So he used to come every evening for the 7 o'clock arti to see Radha Landanishwara and also one of the Pujaris, Leela Shakti. Am I right?
Well, you say it was, I don't know that, but yeah.
There was something going on between. Anyway, there's nothing.
Not with her.
Not with her, but with him. And so he was coming all the time. And I asked him, I said, Dr. Shah, I've got this instruction from Prabhupada to bring those deities over from London. And would you mind helping us, help with the finance of putting them on a plane and bringing them? And he said, how much do you need? And again, I just kind of, I didn't take much time in getting an answer back. I said, at least £500. He said, yes, I can manage that. And what happened was, apparently, Guru Das had got some story that I was bringing those deities over and not have any money, that I was doing something that, was quite, not, what's the word? It wasn't done, well, he thought it wasn't done properly. But then, when I showed him all the paperwork, because we had a lot of paperwork to get, the deities brought over from India, for freight. If you're a businessman, I'm sure you know all about that too, about all the technical stuff. Because they're put in a warehouse, in a customs warehouse at Heathrow Airport. And so Prabhupada, because Guru Das was saying, we should tell Dhananjay to stop this. He's not making any progress in this. And Prabhupada said, well, if Krishna wants to come to London, who can stop him? That was his answer to Guru Das. So, everything went through. And then we went down to the warehouse. There was 4 of us. There was Balagopal, Leela Shakti, Dvijavara. No, what's his name? The Frenchman?
Yeah, I forgot.
No. Anyway, the name will come to me eventually. But there was 4 of us that went down. After we got it's called the Bill of Lading. The Bill of Lading. And so he took us over to the warehouse where the 2 crates were. And he had a big thing for opening the what's it called?
Crowbar.
A crowbar, yeah. So, and as soon as he did that, this big cockroach appeared, about that size. We used to call them flying dates. Anyway, there's a big cockroach. It obviously hitched a lift with Radha Gokulanand. Of course, they weren't the Radha Krishna deities all the way from Delhi to Heathrow. And so this customs guy that was with us had these big hobnailed boots. And immediately, crunch, he just stood in the cockroach, and that was the end of that, Yeah. I don't know why I'm telling you this, but anyway.
You're so fortunate.
The nectar's in the detail.
The nectar's in the detail, yeah.
So they sat in the sign room.
Oh, yeah. So we took them down to Berry Place, and we brought them in, And I think we decided to put them in the sewing room.
Yeah, they're in
And
the
they
place.
stayed there for over a year. Just up there. Nothing was happening because we didn't have a building. Because generally Prabhupada said that usually the building comes, then the deities come after. But in this instant, the deities came a year before the building. And it's kind of interesting because I was involved in both transactions. And I'm trying to remember the French devotee's name. No, it's not coming.
Anyway,
Huh?
not Luigi money, it's, it doesn't end with a Jaya.
Sudurjaya. That's his name, Sudurjaya. I don't know why I'm telling you this because also he's not around, but anyway, he's up in Malvern. And but he drove. He had this white van, transit van that we took. And so when Prabhupada came to, the actual property by helicopter and saw the different rooms, and he asked me, he turns to me and he says, "Do we still have those deities somewhere?" I said, "Yes, Prabhupada. They're in Berry Place on the 5th floor or something." And he said, "I think we will install those deities on Janmashtami Day." And that's what happened. And the deities arrived faultless. There was no crack, there was no chip, there was nothing broken. Because no, they're Radha, they're quite small. No, 42 inches.
37 inches.
Is it 37? Okay. And
Dhananjay, while they were at Bury Place, in the sewing room, it was just covered with
cloth.
Yeah, stood in the corner.
in the corner, on
Yeah.
the table,
No,
on the
just
floor.
well, because they were big, on the floor, just in the
and
corner.
just- But covered.
Yep.
For 1 year.
Yeah,
Well, I don't think it was quite a year, but. Yeah.
almost, but then they moved, obviously, to the manor
Yeah, but that was their position,
Yeah.
for almost a year.
close in proximity to Radhalananishvara in
Yeah.
the Bury temple,
Yeah,
but not worshipped,
no, because they weren't installed.
and then they came here.
Yeah, I mean, Prabhupada decided those things. Some devotees, thought that these deities were meant to go to Edinburgh in Scotland, especially at that time. Tribhuvanath had this idea, and some other devotee had another idea. But I never heard of those ideas, coming from Prabhupada until he came and visited the manor for the first time, then started talking and asking about those deities. And it just so happened that, it worked out well. I mean, it was Janmashtami. And also Prabhupada at that time allowed us to circumambulate around the altar
Yeah, that time.
with our music, with mridungas and kartals, and all the devotees could circumambulate the deity room. It was completely open, and Prabhupada did the first arati.
Yep.
And Balagopal, you dressed Radharani
Yeah, and Malati.
and Malati. Yeah. That was amazing too, because there weren't too many temples that, experienced that, Prabhupada going like this, go around and around, It was a very blissful time, I must say. But then something happened, and, as life does to people sometimes, and we ended up going to Rome. We ended up, I was the first temple president
The manor.
that was Prabhupada. He actually wanted me to be the president of the manor. But and I said, "What should I do?" And he said, "You go downstairs and you tell her, just announce that you're now the temple president." And that's what I did. And all of a sudden,
The GBC.
a very short time passed, like an hour or something. And at that time, someone else was to become the TP. But in this instance, it was Prabhupada who chose me. Why he chose me, I've got no idea, but he did. And so then I was out of a job after 1 hour. So I came up with plan B. I said to Srila Prabhupada, my wife and I would like to open a temple in Rome. Can we have your blessings and permission to do it? He said, yes. He said, you go there, you find a house, you write to me, and I'll come and visit you. That's all he said. And that's what we did. And he did. He came to visit us. He stayed with us for 9 days. And we had this amazing festival for Prabhupada. And we made this poster of Srila Prabhupada, full size. And underneath, Prabhupada is coming. That's all we wrote. Prabhupada is coming. And we booked this hall in this very expensive hotel called Hotel Parco de Principi. I don't know if you know about that. It's Villa Borghese. And it's a 500-seat hall with a stage. And I was always thinking, have we gone too far? Have we got something too big? And who's going to come? Is only just going to be a handful of people or what? And it was amazing because when the lights went up, after we had gone on this stage with Prabhupada, I was holding the umbrella above Srila Prabhupada. And we looked out, and every seat had been taken. And it was seating for 500. Then on top of that, there was also up and down the aisles, there were people sitting there. So we reckon there's about 800 people came. And all they saw was this poster of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada is coming. And it worked. It worked like magic, you know. The less said, the better, as they say, you know. And Prabhupada loved it. He loved it because, you know, he asked questions. And of course, we had this Italian girl called Ali Krishna, who's Mother Sevada's wife. She was translating all of Prabhupada's talks. And then Prabhupada finished the talks. Then he said, any questions? And all these arms went up. And he turned to me and said, oh, these Italians, they like to hear about Krishna. And also, of course, he asked about the Vatican and what was in the Vatican and so on. And there was this one big cloth at the high altar with a dove and like this emanating from the dove, so it's like, you know, effulgent. And when I said that to Prabhupada, he said, oh, they have taken the idea from what's the name of the, where there's two birds in the tree. The two birds, you know, one is eating the fruits, the other is watching. That's Svatasvatira Upanishad. It's from one of the Upanishads. He said, yeah, the Christians got this idea from the Sanskrit. And he also said that these Italians, they want the blessings of Krishna. We have to teach them how to become qualified to be awarded those. And he said, that's our business. Our business is to make people qualified and going back home, back to Godhead. And he met with a cardinal. At that time, there was Pope Paul VI, and he was sick, so he wasn't seeing anybody. But we went to this part of Rome called the non-Christian department of the Vatican. The non-Christian. In other words, if you're a Buddhist or something like that. And we met this Cardinal Pignedoli, who was directly instructed by the Pope to go and visit us. And he used to be the Bishop of Bombay. Wow. And Prabhupada had an amazing conversation with this Cardinal Pignedoli. And we never had any problem with the Vatican, with, you know, the Roman Catholic Church. Everything went very, very smoothly. But I also made sure that we were there legally. And I had to go to this place called the Questura to sign my name and all these documents. I think I signed my name 36 times at the Questura. That wasn't fun, but anyway. And yeah, we were very successful there. We made 25 devotees in 6 months,
Oh.
wasn't it? Something like that. And our Sunday feast was really popular.
Pizza?
No,
Pasta.
it was not even pasta. No. What was the Sunday feast?
We were just do,
Sabji
yeah,
and puris.
yeah, just traditional, we cook traditional.
It was,
You were
traditional
close.
ISKCON. It was ISKCON, quality. And we were very popular amongst the young people because they saw how crooked their priests were. That, they were, that was their business really, to be a priest. Because in the summer, they got holidays and they could go off and sit in, some beach area, take off their collar and do anything they want, They didn't like that because it's cheating. But they liked what we had to offer. And Prabhupada loved going on morning walks. He went to different parts like the Colosseum, obviously, and, all the usual tourist areas. And it was really nice. It was really a very wonderful thing.
Thank you, Dhananjay Prabhu. I would like to ask you how you was promoted to manager of Buri Place, of actual President Temple. How it happened?
What is it that happened?
Like you were.
Can you say it without the microphone,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yeah, can you, because I did it for the sake of recording.
Oh, I'm sorry.
How did you? Did Prabhupada put you as a president of this Buri Place temple, right?
Yeah. Well, no. There was an American devotee called Dayananda, and he was the temple president. And he had a wife called Nandarani, and she couldn't stand the English weather, because she's from California. And so she just disappeared one day. She wasn't around. And Dayananda was very attached to his wife, and then he went off and never came back. And so because they'd lost two important, Prabhupada disciples, and I happened to be the next one, they said, we want you to be the TP. It was because they disappeared, and then I was the next one up. And he didn't actually appoint me as in Berry Place. He appointed me for the manor. That he did, but not to Berry Place. Although I was actually for a short time the TP in Berry Place. Before I started a temple in Amsterdam as well. So,
Thank you. I would like also to ask you about humor of Prabhupada. You said he was good at it. Can you just tell us, recall in the memory of maybe a few jokes, or what was about so
Okay.
funny about his?
Well, here's one. Once Prabhupada was asked by a devotee on the morning walk, Prabhupada, how come you know so many things about so many different, what's the word?
Subject?
Projects, yeah, or objects or whatever. And he said, I know so many things because I have a PhD in trivia. He has a PhD in trivia.
We didn't hear it. Couldn't hear the words.
Prabhupada, he said, the reason I know so many subject matters is because I have a PhD in trivia.
Julia.
You must be aware of that word. And then Gurudas, on a morning walk, asked Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, how long will I live? That was another question that came up, now and again. And Prabhupada looked at me and said, you will live to be 150. And Gurudas said, why so long, Prabhupada? He said, because that's how long it will take you to become Krishna conscious. So he was really good at one-liners,
Anyone? Please ask. I think the mic button.
I think Prabhu was first. He put his hand up earlier. Okay.
We have plenty of time.
Okay. Try.
Do you want the mic or doesn't matter?
Now, let's ask without mic because some technical.
So what were the circumstances? I know Prabhupada was living close to Regent's Park. He was doing like morning walks.
Yeah, I was with him at that time.
Yeah, I mean, what was?
Well, because Mukunda, he rented a one-bedroom furnished apartment, and that building happened to be between Regent's Park and Baker Street. I don't know if you know that part of London, but
Pali Court.
huh?
Pali Court.
Is that what it's called? And what was the name of that big street? That really busy street that runs parallel with Regent's Park?
Baker Street.
No, not Baker Street.
Marylebone Road.
Marylebone. Yeah, Marylebone Road. So Marylebone Road was the actual road that this apartment building was on. There was lots of apartments. And I happened to be, because I think, I don't think I mentioned it, but there was 3 of us taking turns in massaging Srila Prabhupada. There was Trivikram from Buffalo. There was Ishan from Montreal, French-Canadian, who started up the business called Balaram Mridungas, Balaram Drums, the fiberglass ones. So Ishan, Trivikram, and myself took turns in massaging Prabhupada. And it just so happened that the day I was supposed to go, and do, make it, and have the massage, or make the massage for Prabhupada, was on the day that Purushottam, Prabhupada's servant, decided he wanted to see the so-called moon landing. This is in November. Of course, the original one was I think in July, but they did it again in November. And that was NASA, of course, and Walter Cronkite and that whole sort of, a NASA thing. And Purushottam was completely on the side of the scientists. He was absolutely convinced that these Americans did land on the moon. And so Purushottam arranged this TV, because there wasn't a TV in the apartment. And when I used to massage Prabhupada would sit this is in the living room, on a carpet and a mat, right in the middle of the living room. And I would massage him from behind. But this situation was different because where Prabhupada used to sit was now where the TV was. And also Prabhupada had little Radhakrishna deities from his family. And they were, they would always travel with him in a white pouch, a little pouch, zipper pouch. And he put them in this cocktail cabinet. And the cocktail cabinet was up against this wall of the living room. And there were like little thingies that, opened and closed. And generally speaking, Prabhupada would have the doors closed while he was taking his massage. But on this occasion, he kept them open, so that his deities could also watch television. And so where was Prabhupada going to sit? Well, he decided he would sit half on or half off the carpet. And under the carpet, they had wooden, what are these?
Parquet.
Huh?
Parquet.
Parquet, yeah, parquet. And it was up against this corner. There was a lamp standard there. There was a door to the hall, and to the kitchen and the bathroom. And so I had very little leg room. I was kind of kneeling behind Prabhupada, half on, half off this carpet. And Prabhupada was, looking at the TV, and I was starting my massage, which would start with what's it called again?
Sandalwood oil.
Sandalwood oil on the head, and mustard oil on the rest of the body. So I was just happy to be there, and Purushottam was asking, No, Prabhupada's asking Purushottam, what can you see? Because Walter Cronkite has just made the announcement that they're going to start putting on all the cameras and stuff like that, where they landed on the moon. And Purushottam said, well, there's no atmosphere on the moon, so there's no life. And Prabhupada said, oh, he said, that's not how I understand Vedic astronomy. Vedic astronomy means that the moon is a upper heavenly planet. And he also said that the moon is twice as big as the sun and twice as far. So he said that if these astronauts actually traveled to the moon, they would go past the sun to reach the moon. And I said, of course, they didn't do that. And also Prabhupada wasn't too happy that, he said, so what can you see? He said, oh, they've landed in a crater, and there's rocks, and there's, dust and sand. And Prabhupada said, oh, there's no life. There's no buildings. There's no lakes with multicolored lotus flowers and trees and Purushottam said, no, Prabhupada, there's no way. There's no way all these things could be, maintained, because there's no water, and there's no air. So Prabhupada said, then they have not gone to the moon. He just said it outright. And Purushottam wouldn't agree. He just would not agree. And that's what really caused him to leave, because he started doubting Srila Prabhupada. And at the same time, there's only 3 of us with Prabhupada at that time. There was Purushottam, who was the servant, Malati, who happened to be cooking for Prabhupada that day, and me. And so I was in the corner, behind Prabhupada, up against this lamp standard, by the door, and the door was open, a crack like this. So I'm massaging, thinking everything's hunky-dory. Then all of a sudden, Prabhupada put his hand in front of him and went, sit here. Which is weird, he's never done that before, but I went around, and now I'm facing Prabhupada, because I was behind him. Now he's wanting me to, someone other be in front. And all of a sudden, he puts his hands on my head and starts massaging like this. And he starts saying, like this, like this. And I went, what the heck's going on? Why is that happening? And I said, okay, Prabhupada. And so I'm back again behind him. Because I asked him, I said, should I sit in front like you wanted me? He said, then how will I watch TV? So, like I said, he's got a sense of humor. And so then I'm massaging Prabhupada again and thinking everything is back to normal. And again, he slaps with both hands this time on the parquet floor and said, sit here. And twice he did it. So I'll go around again and think, he's my spiritual master. I should disappear in a crack in the floor or something, And he's giving me a massage? That's crazy. And I said, so do you want me to sit in front of you? He said, no, you go back. So I go back and I'm massaging. He said, still you're not doing it properly. And I said, Prabhupada, I promise you I'm not watching television. And he said, okay. And then, like I said, the door was open, just a crack. And he saw something that Malati had just done. So he calls, Malati, come here. And I've got quite a strong voice. No, I'm in a gamcha, Prabhupada's in a gamcha, and she's in a sari, obviously. But Prabhupada would never usually be in that situation, especially when he's calling a woman. So she comes running in, and she's going, yes, Prabhupada. And he looks at her and says, can't you learn? And she's going, what? Learn what? Prabhupada was expert at that too. He would say things to put you off like anything and make you think, well, what does that mean? What is the point of this conversation? And what he saw was that the milk, which was in glass bottles at that time, there was a silver top, red top, and gold top. Do you know about the milk?
Yeah, the different colored tops, yeah.
According to the cream content. Anyway, so there's this little cupboard thing that had a door in it, and so the milkman would put the milk from the outside, and she'd get it on the inside. And what she did was she put these these bottles on top of the deity's tray on a little table just outside the kitchen. And that's what upset him, that she was not really conscious that this is a dirty bottle. And these are the deity's plates. So they should be, be kept clean. But the amazing thing is that he was getting on Purushottam's case about what was going on TV. He was getting on my case for what he thought I was actually watching the TV. And I wasn't, even the first time. But then again, he did what he did. And then he also got on Malati's case as well. He saw just, from the corner of his eye. Meaning that, when you're Krishna conscious, you see everything. There's nothing implausible. So that was for me, it was such a learning. And also the fact that I got the mercy from Prabhupada, because, to be chastised by Prabhupada is not something normal. It's very special. And it happened to me quite a number of times, unfortunately. But you know what they say when the what do they say about the kitchen?
I have no idea where you're going with that.
But this was happening at the Regent's Park apartment.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
question I was trying to focus in on.
But it wasn't in Regent's Park. This was actually on
Not
Baker
Regent's
Street.
Park.
it was near Baker's.
Close to Regent's Park.
Very close. Yeah, we would walk with Prabhupada in the freezing cold. Freezing cold. Tamal and myself always went with Prabhupada. And he would, for some reason, he could get across the street before we got across. And we were young. You were in our 20s. And Prabhupada just said, all of a sudden he's in it. And it was quite a wide street as well. It wasn't just a little sort of alleyway. And it was dangerous because there was a lot of traffic going by too. But he somehow or another, he always ended up over there before we got there. And we went across this little bridge, across this pond with geese and stuff. And he's got his walking stick as usual. And he comes to this area and he whacks it with his stick. And it's ice. It's that cold that it's become icy. And so then he says, "What is this?" And I thought, well, I'm not going to answer that one. This is a trick question. And so Tamal says, I'm not quite sure. Could you explain? That's how he got out of it. Prabhupada said, this is Maya. He said, the dharma of water is liquid. But now this liquidity is no longer there. It's it's just as hard as a stone. So it's got this stone-like quality, which is Maya. And he said, we have stone-like hearts. We have to melt our hearts if we want to know Krishna. Because he would use everything, and whatever caught his eye, or he saw something, because he saw Krishna everywhere. Amazing, absolutely amazing. And there's only two of us with Prabhupada. It wasn't like, when you see some of the places he went to, there's always 20, 30 devotees and sannyasis and GBC. These were very intimate moments. Very relishable, I must say.
My question was in terms of in Regent's Park, somehow, at some point, Prabhupada had a vision or a premonition of a temple for Radhalandaneshwara in Jagannath that he wrote about in letters to his disciples.
Which ones?
Guru Das, was it to your father?
There's 11 letters.
Yeah, in written letters about acquiring property in Regent's
You mean
Park.
Kiradakshai? He was?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, were you part of that
No.
discussion or anything like that?
No.
Okay.
The two main things was getting the deities from Delhi
Yeah.
and getting the manor.
Okay.
That was that was a lot that I was kind of like
That's
involved
what I
in.
didn't know if you were, because all I know is what I've read in letters.
Yeah.
that
Well,
Prabhupada-
I'm reading this letter. I haven't read that letter in ages, maybe 50 years. And it goes on and on and on. It's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Is it possible to get a copy of that?
Sure.
Have you got other letters? I heard there's 20 letters that I'm supposed to have received from Prabhupada.
Yes.
You know where those are?
Yes.
You do? Well,
I can send it to you.
There is a book at Prabhupada's.
I'm missing out on something here. But I remember because there was a TP, Prabhupada was always writing to me and I had to write back to him.
Mm-hmm.
But another time he sent an aerogram because we just finished printing the first Italian Back to Godhead magazine called Torno a Dio.
Mm-hmm.
And we sent that to Prabhupada. You read it? Have you seen that letter? No. Okay. Have you got it?
No.
We can find out. So it was an article from Prabhupada to this magazine, right?
Not an article, it was a letter responding to the Back to Godhead in Italian, the first one.
Uh-huh.
That was in 74. But what he says is also, I mean, Prabhupada was like so expert at encouraging one to try their best, you know. Here's another thing that Prabhupada did. I mean, I don't like to blow my own horn, but this is also quite unique. That he made me TP of Krishna Balaram Temple in Vrindavan. That was in October 1974 in Mayapur. And it was a GBC, what's the word? Approval. There was a quorum of GBC, 5 GBC. Gargamuni, Brahmananda, Bhavananda, Jai Tirtha, and Jai Pitaka. And so when I was there on another kind of, there was a whole different sort of vision I had that I wanted to get Prabhupada's permission on. And so I got this lift from Calcutta to Mayapur with Gargamuni. And Gargamuni had this American devotee called Manibanda. We used to call him Many Blunders. Many blunders, anyway. And so Gargamuni wanted to get rid of Manibanda, and he wanted to put me in charge of this business he had started up, Spiritual Sky Sales and Services, exporting mridangas, harmoniums, kartals, dhotis, saris, gumchas. And he said, I'll give you an apartment, a cook, a driver, and a car. And that's not what I was there for. I was there for something completely different. But I didn't say anything. So we get to Mayapur, and Brahmananda's Prabhupada's secretary at that time. And he says, Dhananjaya, what are you doing here? I wasn't up to anything. I was, I was trying to get something approved by Prabhupada. And so I said, I would like to obviously see Srila Prabhupada. He's only next door, isn't he? And he said, yeah, you can go in. But don't talk about anything, just let him talk. So I did that, I went in. And the first thing that happened was Jai Pitaka said, Prabhupada, that's Dhananjaya, he's Scottish. He doesn't need a visa to stay in India. He should come here to Mayapur and work full time for us. And Prabhupada would withdraw himself when he wasn't quite sure if that was what he wanted to happen. And he said, I've been thinking, and it's just a few minutes past. He said, I've been thinking he should become the TP of Vrindavan, Krishna Balaram Mandir. And they all went, Jai Prabhupada, that's a great idea. And Prabhupada looked and he said, so here we have a quorum of GBC. So I want you all to sign this approval. So then Prabhupada gets out this little Indian exercise book lined, and he writes in his own longhand, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, at a quorum of the GBC, it was approved that such and such should become TP in Vrindavan. And then he passed the exercise book to the GBC, and they all had to sign and date it. So they all did that. And I'm sitting there, I haven't said a word. I've kept my promise with Brahmananda.
And so then Prabhupada said, all right, everyone leave. And I said, should I leave too? He said, no, you stay. You stay here. They're leaving. So the 5 went out. And then he looks at me and he says, you like this idea of being the TP in Vrindavan? And I tried to be philosophical. I said, well, just like if you got, a first-class mango, and you bite from the top or you bite from the bottom, it's all nectar. Well, it's up here or down here. But I know that you want me to go to Vrindavan, so I'll go to Vrindavan. Then the next question he put was, where's your wife? And I said, she's back in England at the manor. He said, no, she has to come here. Because wherever the wife is, the husband is sure to go there. He said, I don't want you leaving India when you're staying here. So, amazing, absolutely amazing. And then he says, when you go to Vrindavan, you'll notice that Harikesh, he's thinking he's the temple president of Krishna Balaram Mandir. So we don't want to upset him. So when you go there and he asks you, what are you doing there? You say, on my behalf, you're looking for sweet water. Now, Raman Reddy doesn't have sweet water because there's so much water that's been extracted, it's become salty because it's ocean water. And so he said, that's all you tell him. You tell him that I've sent you to look for sweet water. Don't mention anything about you becoming the temple president. And wait for further instructions. And anyway, very interesting. Oh yeah, at that time, of course, the deities that were installed on Ram Navami, 1975, they were being stored in one of the rooms of Prabhupada's house. Prabhupada's house was between the temple and the guest house. And so he said, have you seen the deities that are going to be installed? I said, no. He said, you go inside there. You go to that room, you'll see them. So I went there, paid my obeisances, and I came back and I said, Prabhupada, the pujaris are going to be in ecstasy dressing these deities because they don't have these chunky, dhotis and saris and, marble bits and pieces sticking out here and there. They're smooth because it was Jamuna and Bhardwaj. They're the ones who designed those deities. And I said, by the way, some devotees have been asking me that we know that the temple is going to be called the Krishna Balaram temple because the central altar has Krishna and Balaram. And then I asked him, I said, have you decided about a name for those deities, those Radha Krishna deities? He said, no. He said, can you come up with an idea?
Wow.
I went on the spot, I said, Radha Sham Sundar. He said, yes, we'll call them Radha Sham Sundar. And then he said that these are very nice, this is a very nice mantra, Nitai Gaur Radhe Sham, Jaya Krishna Balaram. He said, now you're mentioning all the deities on all three altars.
Wow.
And he said, behind the guest house, there's this Hare Krishna Hare Ram ashram run by these sadhus. So when they hear us chanting this, Nitai Gaur Radhe Sham, Hare Krishna Hare Ram, they will be thinking that we're singing their song, which is Nitai Gaur Radhe Sham, Hare Krishna Hare Ram, which is bogus, it's sahaja. And he said that by glorifying the deities, when you're chanting Nitai Gaur Radhe Sham, Jai Krishna Balaram, you're naming all the deities on the altar, and that's wonderful. So you should continue, immediately start this chanting.
This is a devotee who's milking the cows. He has a question.
Okay.
So, I was wondering actually if Prabhupada gave some specific instructions of what to do with the manor. You mentioned about the cows and how many acres of land we should
150.
Yeah, is there anything else in particular he said?
Well, he also wanted, that island in the pond, he wanted that to be the Which one is it?
Govardhan.
Huh?
Mahavishnu.
Mahavishnu, yeah. He wanted a Mahavishnu deity
Wow.
on that island. So he said that. He said that. What else did he say?
We should build a temple.
Oh yeah, he wanted a 30-story building to be the temple and built on the tennis courts. 30 stories means 300 feet. I mean, that's a long way up. And it was Ranjha. Ranjha was the one who got the job of sketching what it looked like, or different, styles. But Prabhupada is very concerned about that the deities, I mean, the actual building should be 30 stories, or 300 feet high. Of course, we never got permission to do that.
Not yet.
Not yet, that's true. Yeah.
Weren't the first cows kept in what is now like the gift shop and the kitchen there? Where were the first cows kept?
No, they weren't there. They weren't. That was the stables you're talking about.
Where was the stable?
No, I'm saying that's where the stables were there.
They were there.
Yeah, before.
We didn't use them as stables.
Huh?
They weren't stables when we came. They
Well,
were
they're for horses.
originally a stable building.
The horses were used there too. Because it was built in the 1880s.
What Prabhupada was saying about this village?
We should make peace with the villagers. We shouldn't get into fights.
Did he tell to buy it?
Huh?
Did he tell to buy it?
Well, if they could afford it, I mean, every individual devotee would have to, the temple wasn't going to pay for the houses. Yes, Prabhu.
This thing Srila Prabhupada said about 150 cows, where was that? What was the context? Why did he say it? Was anyone else there?
That's why he wanted a place called New Gokula. Gokula means the place where the cows are kept, protected.
Did he say it to you in his darshan room? What was the context of him saying it to you at that time? And where was it?
The darshan room? What's the darshan room?
This darshan room, where did Prabhupada tell you about the cows?
Where did he tell you about the cows? Where was the position?
What was exactly that?
Just asking you where Prabhupada was talking to you about the cows.
Well, it never happened, so nothing was done. We couldn't buy even one cow.
No, okay.
No, what they was asking, they are asking about what was the room or what was the place where Prabhupada told about 150 cows. Was it in the birthplace or here?
Here. It was in his room.
In his room?
Yeah. But it never happened. So there was no consultation or where would maybe the stalls be or whatever like that. That never came into the conversation. Because obviously, I mean, eventually, just like they've got so many buildings now for the cows, they're looked after quite well, aren't they? They're healthy cows, aren't they? They have a good diet, and they've got shelter, and they've got good drinking water.
Yeah, they're happy.
They're happy. They're happy cows, yeah.
VIP. Goshala.
A VIP Goshala, yeah. 5-star.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think that what Srila Prabhupada said to you about 150 cows then is relevant today in the 2023?
You're asking me now if I'm thinking it is relevant?
Is it still important for us, or is it just
I would say that anything that Prabhupada wanted done, he never thought small, he always thought big. So he was always pushing us, to do the right thing. And I think they've done the right thing by what I can see regarding all the buildings that were for the cows' protection. Because we also practice Goraksh. So, and I think also when a cow dies, she has a funeral. Is that right?
Yes.
So,
Also, it wasn't Prabhupada when he gave a number, it wasn't like you had to have that number.
He did.
Prabhupada thought big,
He
he
gave-
wanted cow protection.
he definitely said 150. That was a specific number he wanted.
Dhananjay Prabhu, we have one question from online, and the question is like, before, when Prabhupada was present here, it was easy to attract new people to the temple, just to see the swami. But nowadays, what is your recommendation, how to attract more people visiting ISKCON centers? What would you do? What is your suggestions?
That's a hard one because I've been out of circulation for a number of years now. So, I can't really make much of a comment regarding that. I had a tough time in my life. And that went on for how many years? It started in 2019.
Your health, yeah, his health has been poor.
I haven't stepped foot. I've never been inside the what's that building called? The new one? Yeah, I've never been inside the Haveli. I've never seen inside it.
You never seen what? Sorry.
The Haveli inside.
Wow. We should make a tour.
Horrible.
In the letter it mentions, whether you read it, it mentions that Prabhupada said, try to keep Murray Place. When temple moved from Murray Place to Southern Street, was it controversial? Or was it just a smooth transition?
I had nothing to do with that.
Murray Place was only rented, we didn't own it. And I think it wasn't zoned for the amount of people, I think it was only zoned for, what was it, 14 people or what?
15.
Could actually live. So, and this Mr. French, we did have neighbors who like to report it. So yeah, it was a necessity, it wasn't like, oh, let's, I don't know, I think they looked at trying to buy it at one point and they couldn't or something.
So it wasn't like people were thinking that you're going against Prabhupada's wishes.
No, and Prabhupada does say in the letter, as long as you can.
I have to go to the toilet.
When I was listening,
I have to go to the toilet.
as long as you can.
Is that okay? Maybe you can take these. Oh, that was easy. Oh, but no, it's not. I feel like
With
I'm,
Jan,
yeah.
is this easy?
Maybe put these cartons down. Okay. Sorry.
Maybe besides that area there, and then upstairs is Prabhupada's room, and the ladies' washroom and the toilet, and the sewing room, one lady.
Hare Krishna. Sorry. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna.
Second, I want to just move this.
I don't think there's. You want to
these material bodies. They're not worth the aggro. They're definitely not worth the aggro, these material bodies. Thank you. Oh, that's a big step.
Don't worry.
Well, if I can hold on to the banister, I think.
You just put the leg.
Huh?
Can you put the leg here?
As long as I don't fall backwards.
No. We'll hold it.
Oh boy, thank you.
Don't forget to take no.
I try to make that as clear as anything, that I'm not adding anything, and I'm not describing anything that doesn't, didn't exist.
So do you notice? I would like to ask the last, if you permit me, to just ask 6 quick questions.
Quick fire.
Yes.
Are you coming over here?
His voice.
My wife is coming.
Yeah, please. If you answer together, like each of
Are you sure you
it
can
would be
answer
great.
the questions?
Yeah.
Just before you start,
Yeah, just a question.
Yeah.
I may be mistaken, was it you that Prabhupada wanted to establish distribution of Gorni time
Yes.
dolls
Yes.
as good luck dolls?
There
Could you
were.
what was
Well,
that?
I can.
I mean,
Okay, but maybe ask his questions now, because that's a whole nother story.
that's another story. I know
Yeah.
that's not a good question.
So the 6 questions, just try to answer as quick as possible with a few words.
You don't know my husband very well, then.
Narendra Prabhu, describe Prabhupada in 1 word.
One word, not hyphenated. It's difficult to do it in just 1 word. I could do it in 3 or 4 words. But
Hyphenated then for you, as a
the Lord's confidential personality of servicehood.
Okay. Would you like to also answer one?
What Srila Prabhupada means to us? Or
No,
to
1
me?
word.
One
Describe
word?
describe Prabhupada in 1 word.
Merciful.
Merciful. Thank you. Second, do you regret for something that you could have been done? Like, do you regret? What is this? Like 1, 2 words.
Something I regret.
Yeah.
You said that could have been done? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I would say Parkinson's disease.
That isn't what.
That's something that is absolutely changing, mind changing, physical changing.
Okay. Would you like to your answer?
I guess, I mean, I don't know if I really have any regrets, but, did I maybe have the foresight to, write everything down that Prabhupada said to me, or that I heard, or, and I mean,
That's what I've tried to do.
yeah, if there's something that, I don't really regrets of anything I did, but just, could I have done it better? Could I have done it with,
Thank you. Third question. If you would meet Prabhupada now, what would you say?
No matter where you go, I want to be at your side.
You, Balam Gopalович?
same.
Fourth, what is the most important instruction you received from Prabhupada?
Chant Hare Krishna and be happy.
To remember Krishna, never to forget him.
Fifth, just one advice to the next generation of devotees. One advice from each of you.
Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Or has that already been
I said
answered?
that, but that's okay. I can share. to read from Prabhupada's book, even if it's, you know, a paragraph, you know, read a little something every day from Srila Prabhupada's book.
Thank you. And the last one, how the third generation, third generation of devotees can, no, sorry, my age, can make Prabhupada happy.
By following the four regulations, and adhere and center your life in Krishna consciousness. Always remember Krishna. Always go on.
No, but just, I think the same for us. I don't think it's any different for us as anyone. You try to do devotional service in enthusiasm. Always be enthusiastic to try to engage in some service.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.